Get in, fellas. We're going to therapy. It is not your host, Stephen Solomon. It is your producer, Richie Davidowski. Stephen is traveling this week, so I thought I'd fill in here and there on the podcast. Great episode coming for you. We got Stephen talking about the Olympics, specifically the gymnastics team, Simone Biles, men's gymnastics, good stuff there. Then he's joined by his good buddy, Dylan Scott Horowitz. They talk mindfulness. Very Zen, namaste. Then I hop back in. I do the promotional Hall of Fame. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's a good one this week. And yeah, that's it. We may have some new music coming at you as well, so stay tuned.
All right, team, humbled and happy to start this week's pod with a cap tip to my little sister, Abby. The shirt I had him wearing, the 47011, is the zip code of the summer camp we went to growing up. You've heard me talk about it. Camp Livingston in Southern Indiana services kids of that tri-state region. We all went there. Harrison was a buddy of mine from camp. We're going to continue to have that theme because it was important to me. A lot of personal growth, a lot of close friendships, a lot of vulnerability sowed in those months away from home where you're really pushed to do things on your own. It was a really, really good experience. My sister now has the pleasure of running the camp that we all went to as kids. Super cool. And as you might imagine, a really challenging job in this day and age when these kids are away from home. So I want to congratulate my sister on another great summer at Livingston. Literal cap tip. And now we're back over to America. Fuck yeah. All right, to talk some gymnastics. I mean, we saw this coming, right? So I want to take both a men's and a women's team angle on this. So the low-lying fruit is our girl, the GOAT, Simone Biles. If you've been living under a rock, you know that Simone Biles, in the midst of the 2021 Olympics, rescheduled because of COVID, left the Olympics and withdrew due to, quote, the twisties. That is, for you men out there, the gymnastics version of the yips. She felt unsafe. She felt unsteady, doing the thing she'd been doing her whole life, having the strength to withdraw because she was worried she was going to get hurt. Imagine that. She's been the best at this in the world already at this point for years. And to have that experience would be jarring, honestly. And that's how I would see it. So, cap tip, all of them were just really tipping caps today to Simone and her strength to be honest and her strength to speak out about addressing your needs and making sure you're taking care of yourself, even as such a high level athlete, right? We know like Michael Phelps, a similar story, a guy who honestly, if you were asked now, I imagine would say that he wished he'd have taken some time off and found a way to take the pressure off himself because we know how hard that was on him. Simone's husband, as we may know, Jonathan Owens, is no slouch himself as far as athleticism goes. Former Packers and now Bears safety. Kind of like Travis Kelce, he is more famous for being Simone Biles' husband, potentially than as a football player, but still a rostered athlete. There's a Netflix documentary came out recently about Simone Biles' journey, her time off and her recovery and preparation for the 2024 Paris Olympics, where, like, spoiler alert, we all know she's kicked ass. The team won a gold as a team, and she won her second gold in all around, basically being the best badass Olympian gymnast in the female field. So her husband, it was a dual thing, back and forth, a good supportive relationship. He encouraged her to take that time and get help and be vocal about it and use her platform to support others, which is awesome. And in kind, he then started seeking therapy support himself. As a man, here is his quote. You got to be able to talk about it. And, I feel like when people don't have that outlet to be able to talk, it makes you keep in. And that's the worst thing you can do because that just builds up to the point when you're not in control of your emotions anymore. Thank you, Jonathan. Not much more needs to be said, right? We know that when we keep those things bottled up, we only let out the anger as men, in other ways, other people. But of course, it can look a number of different ways for anybody. And so the opportunity to express yourself, the ability to practice and learning how to communicate those feelings is what Jonathan said therapy has done for him. And bless, he's on such a big stage. He needs to be able to do that maintenance. So thank you both for setting a good example. The men's team has become the story of the summer. So we think of, this was their first gold as a team since 2008. And if you've been watching the Olympics, you know that they've just been darlings, the whole crew of them, specifically America's new sweetheart, Brody Malone. I'm going to play you a video from NBC Olympics that showed his father writing a love letter of sorts to Brody.
Boy, Brody. I want to tell you about my oldest boy, Brody. He was born with his mother's smile and with my fire for competition. After he broke his arm climbing out of his crib when he was 2, we got him into gymnastics so he could get all of his energy out.
Good job, Brody!
Brody's mom, Tracy, and I met at college in an equestrian program, so all of our kids were on horseback by kindergarten. We raised our family in a small town, Cedartown, Georgia. It was a great place for Brody to grow up. That was until 2012, when we lost our Trace to cancer. Like me, Brody doesn't like to show his emotions too much. So I think he buried himself in competition and let all of his pain out through sports. Competing at the Olympics was a dream Brody and his mom had together. I know Tracy's watching over Brody still, and I can see her smile and hear her laugh and feel her joy. So, son, go get them tonight. Sorry. So, son, go get them tonight. Your mom and I are so proud of you.
Well, first off, that dad, what a voice, huh? I'm going to get him on the podcast and see if I can borrow his vocals. So just beautiful, right? I mean, just really, really, really nice. What these examples showed me, if we're breaking down the tape here, is that you don't have to be vocal. You don't have to be overly affectionate to show a family member that you love and care, right? So dad said that it's like me, Brody doesn't like to show emotion. Well, I'll tell you what, dad, being able to say we're proud of you is not something that's guaranteed from parent, especially father to son. That itself takes a lot of courage. It is not commonplace and necessarily amongst men to be able to do that with their sons. Okay. You even noticed dad, he started getting teared up, choked up, and then he immediately was like, sorry, right? Hell, NBC probably would have loved him to cry openly on air. That would have killed ratings. But he's a man. He's from Georgia. He's that kind of guy where you just don't cry. And I still found him to be extremely emotionally attuned. He understood Brody's perspective as a kid, right? He sunk into competition when he was otherwise grieving his mother. He understands what the Olympics mean to him because his mother and Brody shared that goal. So really just special stuff all around. Nothing brings out that kind of spirituality, that kind of connectedness like the Olympics, both within the country and worldwide. So my humble hope is that we can carry a little bit from that into the future. Speaking of mindful and calming sensations, I'm going to have on my boy Dylan Scott here next to learn about mindfulness. Stay tuned. Hey, what's up, KGBs? I'm honored today to have my boy Dylan Scott Horowitz coming to us live from the Pacific Northwest in Portland, Oregon. Dylan and I have been close for a really long time. We were in the same fraternity at Ohio State. In fact, he was my big brother. He grew up in the Staten Island and then central New Jersey area. So the opposite of our guy, Eric, he is a Giants, Yankees, Knicks, Rangers fan, and of course, his beloved Ohio State Buckeyes. Dylan now has carried on his love of sports and talking as a reporter for KPTV on Fox 12 in Oregon. And his mindful activities are really what we brought him on today for. He likes yoga. He likes hiking. He likes eating, mostly anywhere he lived. And he's lived a lot of places for his job. He finds his specific Asian places, his ramen, his Thai, all that stuff. Very New York of him. Hey, Dylan, thanks for coming on, brother.
Namaste. It is.
Namaste. It was perfect. So this is the first block. Yeah, this is our first block, our first module of the DBT block. So we did the intro with Lauren last week. So I thought of the mindfulness and, of course, thought of my most Zen homie, right? Namaste. Mm-hmm. Dylan, what's been your experience with therapy?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years in now, obviously. So, I'm one of the later editions, but like the fellas pod talks about, it's never too late, right? So
never too late. It's been great to watch you work, man. It's been great to watch you work.
Yeah, it feels good. It's been good. It's been healthy, About 3 years in so I'm kind of on the backside of my 30s, but it's been great. Honestly, it's something that, coming from a family of women, I always had voices and ears to lean on there, but I wanted obviously to do something more constructive for myself. So a couple of years ago, hopped on the therapy bus, been going consistently ever since. It's been an awesome journey.
Yeah, thanks for obviously touching on that. What are some of your either your goals or like things that you tend to benefit from or try to work on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really a multitude of things. Like,
Sure.
it's never just one thing. But I think, like, first and foremost, when you wait so long to finally really begin to like delve into yourself, I don't have to tell you, there's a lot to unpack, right?
A lot to unpack.
I think, between relationships with my family, with friends, kind of understanding sometimes I felt, especially with stressful jobs, working in the journalism field, I felt like a lot of times I had extra weight after work, I was emotional, some stuff to dig through. So I think like therapy helped me kind of break those things out a little bit, kind of understand some solid coping mechanisms, which have been important.
Yeah.
And
a
really
lot of coping mechanisms coming down the pipe.
Yeah.
Forever. Just Dylan wouldn't dive into these things in particular, guys, but to give you some background, Dylan started by doing sports and transitioned over to news. In the news world, he's covered such things as the abortion ban in Texas, the Uvalde shooting, and now he's covering the wildfires in the Pacific Northwest. So it's not quite the high school football he used to call, right?
Yeah.
And so it does take a wealth of difference. Now, this is the Dylan Scott Horowitz of Ohio State student radio fame, who once said, "That's not Greg Oden wearing a 0, that's a Block O baby." He called a Delaware's Cows minor league baseball game, and his home run call was, "It's county here." So he's an innovative guy. He's an innovative guy, and I've been very lucky to have him in my life as such a dear friend for so long. Dylan, we're touching on mindfulness today.
Yeah.
How do you define the word mindfulness?
Good question. And I think, when we talk about, whether it's yoga or getting out into nature, like mindfulness is that word that like always
it's hot in the streets.
Yes, exactly. I wrote it down because I was kind of thinking about last night, like how I would perceive this. But I think self-awareness in a lot of ways, like how you fit in the world and how the world fits kind of like in your world. That's how I see mindfulness in a lot of ways, is ultimately, how am I doing today? How am I treating myself? How am I treating others? And like also like what's happening in the world? Like, are there things that I can contribute to, or are there things that I need to be paying attention to? So caring about yourself, but also caring about others. I know that's, not, it's easier.
I like this. It's a great, in fact, Dylan, I think that's like the next step, right? And so we're going to get into the definition of mindfulness. I think of those things as excellent goals when you are being mindful. Right. But again, back to what does it mean? So we'll share. I showed you guys this DBT for Adolescents workbook. It's not to say that my guy Dylan functions like an adolescent. It is to say this is the book I learned to use these things, and I love it. And you're all just going to have to tolerate the dinosaurs and the other childish images that are coming our way over the next month. Okay. So
I think they're cool.
It's cool. I mean, dinosaurs are cool. Who doesn't like dinosaurs? Yeah. So how we define mindfulness is being in control of your mind, rather than letting your mind be in control of you, right? So Dylan's saying that when I'm doing those things, I can check in with myself. I can think about how my behavior is impacting others. I can think about what good I want to put into this world. The idea being that if we're so busy thinking about what someone thinks of us or issues from the past, relationships like with our family, like Dylan said, or work problems, then it's really hard to be mindful. Two arms to mindfulness that we see here is that being mindful implies that we're going to be fully aware with an open mind. So we're present of the moment. And no matter what's happening, we're not trying to place judgment and we're not trying to change the moment. The other aspect is attentional control, or having a focused mind. So we're going to stay focused on one thing at a time, and we're going to not judge it, and we're going to try not to change it. Just be present, right? So we've heard about that. So Dylan touched on some of these things. I'm interested after I read this list, Dylan, to hear your thoughts on if any of this sounds new or different, or just like, right? So being mindful allows you to make better choices, right? We all remember our parents telling us, make smart choices, when we left the house. And if you're too busy fucking around and, doing teenage shit, you're not very mindful, you make dumb choices, right? So the better control we have over our thoughts, the less impulsively we act. When we are being mindful and not judging our own thoughts, we're not shoulding ourselves, like we talked about with Eric a few weeks ago, we decrease our emotional suffering and we increase our pleasure by not adding fuel to our own emotional fires. They help you make, again, important decisions, helps you focus your mind, like we talked about the attentional control, which again can be more productive. That's a lot of something men are looking to be, is more productive. Dylan made it perfect to say this can help us increase our passion for ourselves and others, our compassion. And then this is similar. We can literally lessen pain, tension, stress, and improve our physical health. That is no joke, right? Mark and I talked about body keeps the score. When we have chronic stress, our bodies hold that and increase our chance of disease, chronic pain, etc. So this is a legitimate scientific practice at this point. Mindfulness has enough research back. It's not Eastern, Western medicine talks anymore. This is a real thing we build in for health. What do you think, Dylan? Anything that sounds like maybe not an aspect you would have given your practices of mindfulness credit to?
Yeah, well, I think you talk about like the should, right? Or ultimately kind of even referencing back a couple podcasts ago there. I just think we always say like, put yourself in someone else's shoes, right? And I think that's kind of an interesting take when you talk about mindfulness here, because everybody has their own journey, right? Regardless of who you are, where you're from, what you do every day. So I think that's a pretty fascinating way to think about things is everybody has a different journey to mindfulness, it seems like. And some days are harder for people than others. I mean, as a journalist and as a psychiatrist, I mean, you're hearing people every day in some of the best or the worst times in their life. Like their take on mindfulness is going to be different than yours. And obviously their road maybe to having more empathy for others is going to be different than others. So I think even hearing you say that makes me think more about, okay, well, I might have a different approach to how my day is going or how I'm trying to unwind or get to a place than someone else. And I think that's something that I can continue to kind of grow into.
Absolutely. And the term mindfulness, again, there's a lot of ways we can be mindful, but those are the two main points. We're going to be focused on one thing and we're going to try not to change it or judge it. Other ways that when we think of mindful, we think of like meditation, very popular. We're going to go over these next few weeks, different types of mindfulness exercises. We can also do mindful walking, where we walk and just pay attention to our steps, right? Our feet hitting the ground, the sensations in our body. And Dylan, big hiker, right? A lot of people out here in Colorado. When you're doing that mindful walking, then you can kind of spread that into what the nature is around you and just clear your thoughts. Mindful eating is something that's taught, especially with people who struggle with like binge eating and things along those lines, is noticing the food in our mouth, noticing the bites, noticing the sensations and the flavors, right? So it's really just any practice that has you try to uncloud your mind and focus in on something in particular. In order to be mindful, we need to be in the right headspace. We need to make good choices. Dylan, this will be something new. I'm excited for us to learn about. DBT, in its many ways that it asks us not to be black and white and not to make impulsive decisions, has the 3 states of mind. Let's see if any of these hit for you, Dylan. So when we are feeling very computer brainish, right, we call that reasonable or rational mind, right? So a lot of it's men is usually what we think of, but these are not gender specific. Dylan and I will give you examples of that. We're like logicking the problem. And we've learned that logicking an emotional problem is not good, usually adds fuel to the fire. On the other side is the emotional mind. Okay, these are when your feelings are making the decisions. This often leads to impulsive behavior, a breakup, quitting your job, getting in an argument, violence, running away, right? These are all actions that people do when they're really in their emotional mind. What we want people to do, and you can see the heart and the brain are having a great time there in the middle, we call this our wise mind. Because when we slow it down, our wise mind allows us to use both emotion and reasonable. Our computer brain and our heart are able to be used together to help make good, safe, smart, sound decisions. Dylan, do you think you lean a certain way?
I think there are days where I lean both ways,
Yeah,
I think
sure.
It kind of depends. Some days I feel like, oh, another story like this, another crime, another wildfire. Like, oh man, like how many of these are we going to have? And then some days, it's like, oh, I'm so sad for this community. I'm sad for this family. Like, this is happening again. And I think you want to get in between those two, right? I think like that's always like what we're saying, wise mind. And that's why I do so much yoga, why I go out into nature so much, because I feel some days I'm on both sides and I want to get to the middle. And it's really hard to do that without taking a second, breathing, maybe getting a little flow in there or seeing some trees. Because otherwise it just like kind of repeats.
Dylan makes a really good point there, is that when we're stressed, we, again, revert back to one or the other, black and white, yes or no, extreme type thinking. That happens when we're stressed. That is normal and natural. All these skills we're going to learn are based on getting us back to center with our wise mind. So I talked about gender roles with this, right? It's no shock that men are going to be associated with reasonable or rational mind. Women are going to be associated with emotional mind. There is no biologic or genetic evidence that says that has to be the case. There is nothing scientific about the way we put these roles on different gendered children. I want to emphasize that, and I'll continue to emphasize it in this show. There is nothing biologic or scientific about it. For example, your boy, I'm an extremely emotionally minded person, and my work over time has been to come and use more reason, use more rational thinking to get myself over to a wise mind. And, you know, I find there are a lot of men like that. It's a type. There's a lot of men who go the other way, but there's a lot of women over there too. You know, we have female engineers, we have female scientists who, you know, of course they have their emotions like any human, but they are going to lean more to that reasonable mind. They chose a career that asked them to do that. It's probably some of their genetic traits. Dylan, you probably saw on Monday, one of our first listener asked questions was about like father, like son. How true is it? And I said, I popped out looking like, you know, I'm my mom, you're your mom, right? Yeah. So it just depends. A lot of our traits and our temperament come from which parent and what that parent was like. And not all parents are fitting a certain role.
That is for sure.
This is one of the things I'm going to say in each episode or each lesson of this block. One thing you need to take away, this is it, okay? On the coming pages, and I'll post some of these for exercises, it's just practicing. If you're going to make a decision, are you leading with your head or your heart? How can we make sure we use both, right? So I think that's cool. Dylan, do you go into your mindfulness practices with a structure of any kind or like a way you're going about it?
Yeah, I think honestly, like let go. That's always kind of how I think of things. I'm going to go in and I'm going to let, my older sister's been an instructor for over a decade. So she kind of taught me a lot about this practice anyway, but I let them drive. That's why they're there. They are our mindfulness coaches, kind of like where you are right now. And I think all day I try to be in so control of my job, right? What's the story? Who am I talking to? How am I shaping this? You want to be in control. And then when I get off the clock, I don't want to be in any control. I want to let them tell me to breathe, to stretch, to clear my mind, to slow it down. I mean, That's why I love going, is because I feel that freedom, and that's such a thing I don't get to feel before then often.
Absolutely. And we'll comp, you know, these different skills we're going to learn in the next few minutes to yoga here and other types of mindfulness practices. Yoga is a lot about getting into your body and getting into your breath, which are things that men totally ignore most of the time. I know since I've started this podcast, I've had a number of people reach out and be like, I don't feel feelings in my body at all. We've numbed it out. It's not a role for us. Dylan, I'm having a fun laugh when you said I'm serving as your mindfulness coach. In the year 2007 and 8, I don't know that any one of our friends in college could have imagined that I would be, well, that maybe you and me would be on here, but that I would be the one teaching people skills for mental health. So, hey, it's hard work, baby. That's the whole point I've made. I've worked my ass off for it. Let's go. So when we're teaching mindfulness in this type of setting, sometimes just saying go be mindful is not enough for people. They need a little more structure. And again, this is all skills-based dialectical behavioral therapy. So we're going to learn the what skills and the how skills. Dylan and I will just kind of chat back and forth about it, of how to be mindful and how to best use these practices in your day-to-day life. Don't want you bogged down by it. Don't want you thinking too hard. These are just cool ways to like take, you know, have a little more advice, a little more structure on what it'll look like to be mindful. So the what skills, we observe, describe, and participate. All right. Alone, those are pretty good. Observing implies that we're watching, we're using our senses, we're not focusing on our thoughts, we are letting them go as if they were leaves on a stream or on a conveyor belt. A Teflon mind, same thing. That's a good thing men like to say, is that Teflon, like your pan, thoughts are going to slip right off. We don't push away our feelings. We don't try to change them. We just let them be. When we describe our feelings, again, something men don't do very well, it is helpful to label what we observe with words. I feel sad. My face feels hot. My heart is racing. We are not interpreting anything. We're not saying I'm pissed off, because that implies some second level stuff, right? I'm angry because I am feeling this way in my body. We don't want to let ourselves spiral in these moments. I know that happens to me. Dylan, any times that's happened to you lately?
Like every day.
Yeah. Dylan and I are some naturally emotionally minded boys. Our friends know that.
Yeah.
And so it's
raised by women, raised by pack of women.
I mean, I'm my mother's son, you know? Yeah. So, and then when we participate, we want to be in the moment, right? When you're dancing at a wedding, when you're taking an exam, when you're trying to understand how you're feeling, we want you to be there, whatever we call it, get in the zone and let things be. So we observe, so we pay attention, and we try not to add layers or judgment. We describe, we use words to describe the situation we're in, because we want to stay paying attention to that. Facts, not judgments, not observation, not opinions. And we participate. When you're doing something, go full in. And that's why yoga is a great example of the participate aspect, especially, which is the whole point of yoga is, let me reframe. Dylan's our expert in yoga. What I take away from my yoga practice is be paying attention to what you're doing right now. And then that lets you get in the best stretch, the best pace of your breathing. I've had back surgery. I've got a hip tear. I broke my foot recently. I'm all rocked up. So it's just, you got to be focused so you can really get into your body and help yourself feel better.
For sure. Absolutely. And honestly, just on that, that is what a good instructor would tell you anyway. Like, turn it all off, right? Shut your phones, reset for these 60 minutes, be here and be in this moment, like you're kind of saying. And I think, like, when you leave, there's such a sense of reset that feels so good, almost like you've exhaled, for 60 minutes. And then you can kind of do that whole day over again, but that kind of hour allows you to do all that. So exactly what you just said, that's kind of the experience I've had too.
Yeah. And so these, again, are nice frameworks to allow you to think about how you want to practice mindfulness and how you can use these skills to help yourself when you're first starting out. The how skills, right? So we don't judge, we stay focused, and we do what works. Dylan has emphasized that this is different for everybody, what these things would look like, right? So I've talked about this a bunch. Don't judge. Something can be harmful, something can be helpful. But if you're going to say, like, he's a jerk, that is a layer. That adds a layer of judgment. You don't know what was going on for that person. The fact or the describe skill would be he walked away while we were talking. That's a jerkish thing to do. You don't know if he was about to sneeze, if he got triggered by something that you accidentally said, if he had a phone call in his pocket, if he's hearing voices because he's schizophrenic. We don't know. I'm just throwing it all because it helps us be less angry. It helps us get away from that he's a jerk all the way over here at 100%, when we can say, aren't there other reasons that he might have done that thing that he did? I know that helps me a lot when I'm feeling judgy or doing what used to be my favorite thing and holding a grudge.
Part of our culture.
It's part of our culture. I've worked very hard on it. We stay focused. So this is much like the participate skill. We stay and do one thing at a time. People who struggle with ADHD or anxiety try to do multiple things at a time, right? So we just want to do one thing at a time, set a timer on it, things like that can help you just say, I'm going to work on this for this amount of time, and I do not want to get distracted. And we're going to do what works. I've given a handful of examples, but everybody, you're free to, there's mindfulness apps. There's a lot, things like that, meditation, mindfulness, that can allow you to build a practice with support. A lot of it's deep breathing, can be a lot of other visualizations. And these are all great ways to start building this into your life. I'm going to make sure to emphasize as I do, if you're watching us and not listening, the very bottom line under Do What Works is let go of negative feelings and shoulds. That can hurt and make things worse. Shoulding, bad. Bad. Rarely helpful. We learned that with our boy Eric a few weeks ago. Big shoulder, our guy Shine. Remember our first DBT assumption, Dylan, is we're going to assume that everybody is trying the hardest they can. They want to do better. They're doing the best they can with the skills they have, right? So that is something we need to walk around assuming in life, because then we don't think people are a jerk as often. We just think, they walked away from my conversation. I don't know why. That's weird. I bet if they do that a lot, they're having a hard time making friends and influencing people, Yeah. And so that's like a good way to think about it. Is like, well, I don't know. Like we talked about with Lauren last week. If somebody is annoying or frustrating to you, they're probably not having a very good time in life. It's probably not treating them all that well because they're probably annoying and frustrating most people. I want to show what would be very helpful to people. So this is the homework this week. The one thing I wanted you to take away was Wise Mind, but the homework we're going to do every week, and I'll post these in our link tree, and soon coming our website. Might even be running up and before this episode airs. Okay. So these are showing you the skills of mindfulness, and just use some examples of when you had a time that you were, feeling bigger emotions, or, maybe feeling more rational, a little more computer brain, and you wanted to separate from that. And just, what skills did you use? How did it go? It's not, there's no grade, there's no nothing, there's no judgment, just that you tried and you observed, you participated, you reflected on your thoughts and feelings.
Can't we get some dinosaurs on there? We need some
and we get more no, there's plenty of dinosaurs coming up in the coming weeks. The next week I see some cows. We'll get there. We'll get there. So Dylan, man, this is fun. Yeah. I'm happy to have you. I'm sure you'll be back. Gentlemen, or anyone listening to this, but we're going to start doing on Thursdays survival skills. And some people have sent me some already. We're going to start posting those on Thursdays in the social media. So this is a great example. Send a video. If you need somewhere to do that, you can hit us up on Instagram or email. Anyone, of course, free to text me. But a video like a minute saying, what is your mindful hobby? What are the things you do to decompress, disconnect? And we're going to be posting those because it'll be great to have people giving examples of things they do to help their mental health and setting a good bro-emotional example for other kinder, gentler bros. Dylan Scott Horowitz, one of the kindest, gentlest bros that I know. No one's perfect. I love the boy. He's as close as I can get, So we'll end each interview as we do. No, you want to do it. Well, namaste.
Namaste, and obviously respect the flow. It heads it.
Promotions on 3. 1, 2, 3. Promotions. There we go. Dylan really wanted to do the thing. All right, guys, we're going to induct a new member into the Hall of Fame next. Stay tuned.
All right, I am back with this week's Bro Motions Hall of Fame inductee. This week's inductee is someone else that I really look up to. Someone else that I've dressed up as for Halloween. We got a trend going. First Bob Ross. And now we have, ding, 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 Nick Offerman. And we all know him from Parks and Rec, where he played Ron Swanson, his alter ego, Duke Silver. That's who I was for Halloween. Had a little inflatable saxophone. Grew the mustache out. Perfect costume. Loved it. So Nick most recently was in a show called The Last of Us on HBO. He actually won Independent Spirit Award for that. And he gave a super great acceptance speech for that role. He plays Bill in The Last of Us. And he said that he was honestly shocked that he was given the award because ever since portraying Bill, he's been getting a lot of homophobic hate. The character he portrays is gay in the show, but it wasn't that way in the video game. So he gets a lot of people coming up saying hurtful, hateful things like, why did you have to go ahead and make it a gay story? And his response is, because you ask questions like that, this isn't a gay story. It's a love story, you asshole. Don't focus on that part of it. Focus on the love part of it. He's just like super genuinely himself, especially with his wife too, Megan Mullally. They met early 2000s. She's from the show Will and Grace from the 90s. I don't know if anyone watched that, but you probably know her as Tammy too on Parks and Rec. Ron Swanson's crazy ex-wife. Nick Offerman's real life wife, Megan Mullally, plays her. Super inspiring and great to see, like, these Hollywood celebrities just like genuinely fawn over each other. They wrote a book called The Greatest Love Story Ever Told, where they just gush about their love and are very open about their relationship. Megan, I believe, is like 10 or 12 years older than Nick, so they talk about that. They're child free, which me, myself, my girlfriend Maddie, we're planning on being child free. We like this dink life. We're traveling around right now. We wouldn't be able to do this with kids. Nick's wife was asked about them not having kids. She just said, like, they never had an organic, burning desire to have kids. It just never happened naturally. It wasn't something they sought out. And it's just, since my girlfriend and I, like, that's the life that we want to have. It's inspiring to see it being normalized by these celebrities. And because when we tell people that, sometimes we get looked at sideways that we don't want to have kids. So it's just like amazing to see these people on their platform stand up for what they believe in, not conform other people's expectations of them or their preconceived notions or this or that. So they're just like two like super great people, super in love with each other, not afraid to express what they want, what they mean. Nick Offerman, you are this week's Bromotions Hall of Fame inductee. Congratulations. We are happy to have you. Up next, Citing Sources. That's it. That's all. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of Getting Fellas. We're going to therapy. Before we go, you know that we like to cite our sources because we are scientists. We are doctors, as Stephen likes to say. So first off, I want to thank the NBC Olympics for the Brody Malone segment. Want to shout out the DBT Skills Manual for Adolescents by Jill Rathis and Alec Miller. Thank you, Dylan Scott Horowitz, hopping on, talking to Stephen about mindfulness, about yoga, about how that affects our everyday life, how it can help improve our everyday life. Shout out Nick Offerman, our latest inductee into the Bromotions Hall of Fame. Super happy to have you, buddy. Check out our website. We just launched it. Pretty basic right now. GetInFellasPod.com. Send us listener ask questions. Hit us up on Instagram. Shoot us an email. Let us know if you want to remain anonymous. We don't have to use a video segment or use your name or anything like that. Feel free to ask anonymous questions for Stephen to answer. We do have the Wisdom of Solomon on Mondays. And you know how we end every episode? We have to put our hands in. Feelings on 3. 1, 2, 3. Feelings! Thank you guys for listening. Catch you next week.